In this video demo, I'm going to show you guys how to tone your canvases. Now, toning a canvas is something that you'll probably do at the beginning of every painting. And the reason for that is because, if you tone a canvas, that gives your new layers of paint something to stick to. If you leave areas in your painting slightly uncovered, it means that the canvas tone will poke through. So if you have a toned canvas, that's a lot more interesting to see in a painting versus just plain white canvas showing through. That's something that's kind of a marker of a lot of amateur paintings. They start on the plain white and you get those little bits of white coming through the paint and it just looks it just doesn't look right. Another reason is that if you start with a stark white canvas, it has a way of confusing your eyes when you're placing your paint. It's so bright that everything, the values in relationship to that kind of become skewed. And then when you're done, you find that the values that you placed don't look the way that you wanted them to because they're no longer against a bright white background. All right, so let's take a look at these materials. We have our canvas. I picked this up at Michael's. It's got a deeper edge, which I always like in paintings, but for a painting class, you don't need fancy stuff, just get a nice thin edge canvas. Here we have a large brush, and I have an oil painting brush from Rosemary. They make very nice brushes, but you guys don't necessarily need that, especially for toning canvases. You can just get one of those cheap brushes that you can get at the hardware store, just something large to make easy marks, cover a lot of ground. We have here a tube of burnt sienna oil paint, and the reason for the burnt sienna, it makes a nice neutral tone for a lot of paintings. It's a very versatile color to tone your canvas. And burnt sienna also has a way of, because of the mix of the paint, it dries a little bit more quickly than some other paints, so artists really like that, because it means they can tone their canvas and then start working on it fairly quickly. It's also a nice warm earthy color, so it's neutral, it's warm, it has a way of kind of affecting the layers that you paint on top of it in a positive way. All right, so here I have my Silicoil brush cleaner, and the reason I have this is because I have my Gamsol in here. So I don't have a container of Gamsol with me that's untouched. So I'm just going to be using some of the Gamsol that I have in my brush cleaner tank. And that's one of the nice things about Gamsol. It's very reusable. I just let this sit here for a while, all of the paint sunk to the bottom, and now I have a nice clean layer of Gamsol on top. Okay, final material, I have a rag here. It's just a plain rag. I cut it out of a t-shirt, an old t-shirt. You can also use blue paper towel. If you use a regular paper towel, that has the effect, it's not as strong and it tends to shred and leave lots of little pieces of paper towel on your canvas, and you really don't want that. So grab a rag or grab the blue paper towel. Okay. So I'm going to start by taking my burnt sienna and putting a blob of paint right there on my palette. That's the final thing you need, a nice palette for mixing. Okay, going to open my Silicoil brush cleaner so I can access the Gamsol. And I'm just going to dip my brush in that. I want a healthy amount. All right, so you see how that's mixing? It's very, very fluid, very liquid. It can get a little messy. Oh, and some people like to use gloves for this. Best practices is to wear gloves. So do as I say, not as I do. I don't usually use gloves when I paint, but most of the time when I'm working on toning canvases, I will, because it will keep you, it's just an extra layer of protection. I'm not using them today because I left my gloves in the studio and I'm shooting this from my home space. One thing to mention is toxicity. So I know a lot of you probably have questions about how toxic certain fumes are. And the only thing you might have to worry about here is Gamsol, but overall it's very safe. Gamsol is one of the better mineral spirits to use to thin out your paint because it's been very refined, so that removes a lot of the toxicity. I still wouldn't recommend breathing it in if you can avoid it, and I wouldn't recommend, you know, getting it too soaked into your skin. If you have generally healthy skin, it's not going to break that barrier, but still, you know, if you get it on you, wash your hands and crack a window if you can. Okay, so it's very liquid, and I'm going to just start brushing that on my canvas. So we're just getting a really nice warm tone here. And just cover the canvas. There's no specific way to do it. Some people like to get very artistic while they're toning their canvases, and they make nice swoopy brush marks. They want to create like an interesting background to paint on, right? But I'm focusing today just on getting a really nice evenly toned canvas. We're going to wipe this down in a second, so I'm not being too careful with my mark making. Just making sure the paint is evenly dispersed. Right, so it's getting a little, I'm moving through my material, so it's a little harder to spread in this last part. But it's okay if it's a little bit streaky because we will use our rag to even things out. Okay, so when you are painting, let's talk about the edges of canvases. So some people like to leave those edges bright white, and some people like to paint them, and there really isn't a correct answer to this. It's kind of up to your personal preferences. I will say that if you leave a blank edge, sometimes it looks nicer when you make the canvas and stretch the canvas yourself because it has more of that artist hand look to it. I think that when, personally, I paint the edges of my canvas because I buy them from the store to save time, and I feel like that uniform look is just a little too clean for me, but it's up to you. And in this class, because it's an intro level class, we're not thinking about presentation just yet. You don't need to tone the edges of your canvases. All right, so we'll take this rag, and I've kind of balled it up like this so that you get a smooth edge, and then I'm just holding that other side. Okay, so I am just wiping that down. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to smooth out any areas of paint where I feel there are lumps or bumps. And I don't want to necessarily leave a streaky look. Although, as I said, you know, we're doing a lot of alla prima painting. It's not, a lot of this will be covered anyway. Okay, and that's it. You have a toned canvas. You are going to want to let this sit until it is mostly dry to the touch. Technically, you can start working into it right away, but it will, it could get a little sticky. So personally, I like to tone a bunch of canvases at once. I just take a day, tone, and then whenever I need a canvas, I have one waiting for me.